Hello. Are you ready to explore a fourth line day? Today we're looking through the 63rd gate, which is the gate of doubt. After, after completion. And this is the fourth line called memory. When we reach the upper trigram, here in the fourth line, we have the transpersonal capacity to externalize our questions, to externalize our doubts. And because we know that there is a fourth gate at the other end of the channel, our concerns are now about the other. Very often we hear about the other when we get to the fourth line. This line is called memory. The question itself is rooted in the patterns. We must have enough patterns for comparison in order to recognize that there is something wrong with the pattern in the first place. So there is a deep memory capacity here in the fourth line to have these patterns, which ultimately can lead to a very powerful detailing of them if it gets to the 62nd gate. We are in the upper trigram. This is a line of externalization, and it's also a line of being very fixed. So we know that it's going to be very fixed on its doubts. The exaltation says the detailed accounting of the achievement process, whose information base can prepare a new order for the future. The pressure to explore the doubt in detail as the foundation for eventual formalization. So this is a very clear reference to the harmonic gate, to gate 4, which is the gate of formalization. In order to explore questions, to explore doubts in detail, the fourth line is always going to have a lot of friends. You know, they're going to use their network because fourth lines, well, I mean, that's the nature of the fourth line. And it's going to have those friends that it can externalate. I haven't done one of those for a long while. It's going to externalate its doubts. Is that like a cross between externalize and exterminate? It's going to externalize its doubts collectively, which doesn't mean that it's going to just, do it all at once at one time. It's not like going to a support group for questions and doubts anonymous. It's not anything like that, but just part of the process of integrating with their friends, with their network, sharing their questions, sharing their doubts, and not accepting an answer until the detail of the response to the question has been built up. It's a bit like getting a second opinion when you go to a doctor. It's not accepting at face value any given answer. It's a really healthy approach in many ways. The fourth and fifth lines are transpersonal. They know there's a gate at the other end of the channel. And because of that, they know that their doubts will be answered. The answer may be good, bad, right, wrong, but they do know they'll always get an answer of some sort out there. The fourth line is going to look at the pattern in detail. It is out of the depth of their patterns that they have as a memory resource that they can really ask some very sharp, incisive questions. They have the background and they have a lot more to offer than the person on the other side. The only difficulty in terms of this being a collective process is that they are very fixed in their doubt and in their suspicion. They're very fixed in getting their question answered. They're very fixed in what they're looking for as a response. And for other people, it can seem that they're really obsessive about their pattern. And that can actually make it very uncomfortable for other people. This is the possibility that you will get an answer if you have a really good question. And this fourth line, it knows that the answer will come. So they do want to make sure that their question is really rich in its pattern detail so that they do get an answer that is appropriate. In the detriment, a willingness to forget in the glow of victory with a possible price to be paid later. The pressure and risk to forget the details when the doubts have been answered. So here we get the answer that seems to fit and we accept that. And we've been able to externalize our question and get our answer and accept it. And of course, the whole thing about that is that it might be valid relatively, Subjectively, though, without other reference points, we can't really be certain, and the doubt will linger, even if it's a good answer. Doesn't mean it's a bad answer, that the doubt is still there. The doubt will linger because it hasn't been substantiated. And the fourth line recognizes that the other side, there are so many possibilities over there. So it realizes at one level that even though it has a good answer, there may be a better answer. Remember that the collective is always concerned about the best. So in this context, they want the best answer. In order to get the best answer, they've got to have the best question. So this is someone with all the pattern images that they have in that system of theirs. They recognize that there's something wrong because of that they've seen in another pattern. They ask the question of that pattern, they get the answer to why it is wrong, and then they forget some of the other stuff that they were looking at to get to that point. And because of this, when it comes to projecting it into the future, they don't have all the information that is necessary for them. They won't have all the things that are needed for the final detail. What happens is that then after a lifetime of getting answers only to that aspect of theirs, that very fixed aspect they have, leaving out everything else, they have a totally different perspective about how things will move forward into the future. In many ways, they kind of simplify things for us because they leave out a lot of the detail. Throughout this discussion of lines, we have to remember that it is always conditioned by the nature of the rest of the design. So if you have this line without access to the fourth gate in an undefined throat, and you've got an undefined ajna as well, then it's quite a process. All of that is going to be conditioned, and it can be very difficult. But if you've got someone who can process that through, then obviously this is a very different experience. But the reality is that you come up with a different kind of logical understanding. It's a kind of process where we have a science writer. You can look at someone, so someone who understands the science, but they leave out vast amounts of detail when they share it. So they just give the logical pattern so that lay people, we don't understand necessarily the whole of the science, but we can grasp the little bits that they give us. It's enough for us. So that can actually be very effective for the collective in that way. And none of these aspects are ever going to be about good or bad. It's not about restricting any particular way of asking a question. It's nothing to do with that. It's just about seeing that there are different mechanical ways in which those questions will arise, and they bring out a different kind of process in the answers as well. So the grounding is in gate 64, of course, in the fourth line called conviction. So maybe this is the conviction to wait for the right answer, or the conviction that your question is correct in the first place. The moon has been in gate 2 since 8:25 this morning. It stays in individuality today as it moves into gate 23 in the ajna at 23:07. It's the gate of assimilation and splitting apart. And this is the expression for the inspiration that comes down from the 61, that is rationalized in the 24, breaks through in the 43 into a structured and efficient telling that comes out here through this throat gate in 23 that says, I know, or I don't know. And our final moon gate for today is gate 8 at 03:12 tomorrow morning. This is the gate of contribution. Again, it's a throat gate. The moon is going through all the throat gates over the next 3 days. So this is the expression of the self because it is opposite gate 1. That's its harmony. Gate 1 is the spirit of the self. It's the gate of, no, it's not the spirit of the self. That's 25. It's the gate of self-expression. And so this is what the 8 is expressing. Its contribution is to express self-expression. But we are still in individuality here. And so we have all those themes of empowerment and so on. So contribution comes from a desire to express itself for itself, and it might empower you at the same time. And if it does, that's a happy coincidence. It's not really trying to empower you because individuality is what it says on the tin, really, isn't it? Okay, that's us done for the fourth line. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow for the fifth line. Until then, as always, love yourself and go gently.